The Trinity Test, Seconds That Changed the Lives of Thousands. On July 16, 1945, at exactly 5:29 a.m., a nuclear bomb, nicknamed the Gadget, was detonated, marking the first successful nuclear bomb testing, or the Trinity Test. Part of a larger Manhattan project for top-secret government nuclear testing and development, the Trinity Test marked the breaking barrier between man and atomic weapons. This opened the door to atomic weapons used in war, radiation sickness for locals, and especially the future of what man-made bombs could hold. Nuclear bombs are explosive devices that obtain their destructive force from either fission or fusion. The Gadget was a fission-powered bomb. The process of fission is when the nucleus of a molecule is split in two, and when that split happens, energy is released along with neutrons. These neutrons then go on to collide with other molecules, which then restarts the process and produces another surge of energy in a chain reaction. As this process continues, the amount of atoms splitting multiplies, as do the amounts of energy, thus resulting in an extremely high amount of energy released. When fission was first discovered on December 21, 1938, it opened doors to new scientific insight and ideas. The scientific community had thought of it as new opportunities and inventions, not as the destructive machinery it soon became. Enrico Fermi was the first to demonstrate a nuclear chain reaction in 1942. Concurrent with this discovery was the Second World War. Countries knew that the possession of a weapon made with nuclear fission could mean winning the war or not. It would have provided protection against other nations who would have had the same power and tools. Therefore, production in the frenzy for creation of the atomic bomb was started. Many countries had programs for it: Germany, Britain, France, the Soviet Union, America, and Japan. Thus, the Manhattan Project was created by the U.S. government in June of 1942 to design and build an atomic bomb. It was a race to beat the Germans, as they were the U.S.'s closest rival in the matter. Los Alamos, directed by Robert Oppenheimer, was a site concentrated on the actual design and creation of the weapon. The Gadget, the nuclear device made to detonate as the first atomic bomb, was a plutonium implosion device. Plutonium devices use regular explosives placed around the central plutonium, which quickly squeezes it and increases the pressure and density. As this happens, the plutonium reaches critical mass and fires neutrons and starts the chain reaction of fission. Scientists were first unsure of how effective this would prove to be and therefore created Jumbo, which acted as a fail-safe for the Gadget. In the circumstance in which the plutonium didn't explode, it was meant to preserve the material and prevent the loss of it. Eventually, scientists were confident in the ability of their invention, and Jumbo was not needed in the final product. General Groves was concerned for criticism on spending $12 million on this unused product and tried to destroy it, without success. The remains of it can still be seen on the Trinity test site. On May 7, 1945, a 100-ton TNT shot was set off as timing practice and calibration for the actual test. The experiment used ordinary explosives that were suspended in air. As the weapon was developed and close to being finished, the final tests and experiments were run. The test site, called Trinity, was being prepared. Kenneth Bainbridge, the director of Trinity Nuclear Testing, led test site development. Camps were set up, roads were paved for transport, and wires and cables for power were being placed. With the test date looming closer and closer, external pressure was growing. Harry Truman, President of the United States at the time, was intent on ending the war with Japan and needed the results of this test before any action could have been taken. Attacks on the Japanese coast had already begun, and tension and anxiety in the scientific community were higher than ever. My first impression of the explosion was the very intense flash of light and a sensation of heat on the parts of my body that were exposed. Although I did not look directly towards the object, the first sensation was one of intense light covering my whole field of vision. This seemed to last for about half a second, after which I noted an intense orange-red glow through the clouds. Several seconds later, it appeared that a second spherical red ball appeared, but it was probable that this apparent phenomenon was caused by the motion of the airplane, bringing us to a position where suddenly I felt heat on the side of my head toward the tower. Opened my eyes and saw brilliant yellow-white light all around. The heat and light were as though the sun had just come out with unusual brilliance. About a second later, I turned to look at the tower. Sometime later, the noise of the explosion reached us. It had the quality of distant thunder, but was louder. The sound, due to the reflections from nearby hills, returned and repeated and reverberated for several seconds. My reactions were compounded of relief that It worked. Consciousness of extreme silence and a momentary question as to
It was like
whether
being
we
at
had
the bottom
done
of the
more than what we
ocean
intended.
of light.
We were bathed in it from all directions. The light withdrew into the bomb as if the bomb sucked it up. Then it turned purple and blue and went up and up and up, and we were still talking in whispers when the cloud reached a level where it was struck by the rising sunlight, so it cleared out the natural clouds. We saw a cloud
was
that
seen
was
to
dark
last
and red
forever.
at the bottom and daylight at the top.
You wish it would stop. Altogether, it lasted about 2 seconds. Finally, it was over, diminishing, and we looked toward the place where the bomb had been. There was an enormous ball of fire, which grew and rolled as it grew and went up in the air in yellow flashes and into scarlet and green. It looked menacing. A new thing had just been born. A new control, a new understanding of man which man had acquired over nature.
We knew the world would not be the same. A few people laughed, a few people cried. Most people were silent. I remember the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to oppress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I have become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all felt that, one way or another. Those few seconds marked the beginning of the atomic age. Soon after the test, government officials covered it up, reporting it as an accidental detonation of a bunker filled with explosives and pyrotechnics. Only after the events in Japan was the true nature of the explosion made known. The 100-foot tower from which the gadget was suspended was completely gone. All that was left was a crater, about 1,200 feet in diameter. On the outskirts were pieces of radioactive glass-like substance named Trinity. The radiation levels near the site were 10 times the average. President Harry Truman excitedly awaited the news of the Trinity testing. Upon hearing the success of the test, a ship was sent out that morning to an island near Japan. It carried a device named Little Boy and its uranium bullet, where it would be assembled and put to use. Another bomb, Fat Man, was also sent out and was to be used after Little Boy. General George Marshall, Army Chief of Staff, had said, "We had to end the war. We had to save American lives." Although the tragic story of Hiroshima and Nagasaki are known to many, the lesser-known Tularosa Basin Downwinders story was created that day too. The Downwinders faced many hardships due to radioactive fallout. About 19,000 people lived nearby the testing site, and impacts on them included heightened cancer rates, diseases which led to financial and social stress, death, birth defects, and stillbirths. As Tina Cordova, the president of Tularosa Basin Downwinders Consultorium, attested, "I got thyroid cancer when I was 39, and the question they asked me when they diagnosed me was, 'When were you exposed to radiation?'" The fallout of the explosion landed on crops, animals, food, water, all of which was ingested by residents of the town, not knowing the negative impacts it will later cause. In a speech made on the Senate floor in Washington, D.C., New Mexico Senator Tom Udall had said, "Radioactive debris fell from the sky, killing cattle, poisoning water, poisoning food, the air we breathe. The damage was done and would remain long after the test was finished." July 16, 1945, is the day that doors were opened, and mankind as we know it was launched into the atomic age. A nuclear bomb was detonated, marking the first successful nuclear bomb testing. The use of such a weapon was now available in warfare, spiking the death rates of World War II. The radioactive fallout led to long-lasting health effects on all who lived near. But most importantly, the barrier between man and atomic weapons, which had never been crossed before, was now busted wide open, into a world with limitless atomic possibilities. This one event was a doorway from a mere idea and notion of a weapon capable of mass destruction into a reality.